The haftora for Shabbat hagadol is from the final chapter of the Novi Malachi, and it's the final chapter in all of Nevi'im. It's, so to speak, a chazak type of haftora. The Novi Malachi lives at the time at the beginning of the Bayis Sheni. He's a colleague and compatriot of Ezra and Nehemiah and Mordechai. That's the period of time that he lives in. And he is the Novi that returns to Yerushalayim. And he is the one that identifies where the machon hamikdosh is, where the mizbeach was, because that could only be done through a Novi. But with him ends the era of Nevi'im.
What do the people today think? Do they want to build a base?
I don't know, but I voted. That's all I can do. After that, I'm done. So the Nevi'im, that's one stage in Jewish life. And we see that in Pirkei Avot, Nevi'im gave it over to the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah, so that's already Tanoim, that's Torah Shabbal Peh, that's Chachomim, but it's not Nevi'im anymore. And that's one of the great changes in the era. So the Meforshim discuss, what does this haftora got to do with Shabbat hagadol? What's it got to do with Pesach? Doesn't say anything regarding Pesach. And we have, for instance, haftorot that will appear in the Yontiv of Pesach that deal directly with what happened. The King Yoshio made a Pesach. It describes Pesach. But here, this is, and if we read the haftorah, it's an indictment of corruption. Vayisi eid memaher, God says, I will be a swift witness. V'machashvim b'mnoafim b'nishboim b'shmi l'sheker, people who violate me. They swear falsely with my name. And the Meforshim discuss swear falsely in my name means not only that, God forbid, a person takes an oath that is false and uses God's name, but they represent me falsely, which is a problem, especially when people mix religion and faith with other things. So then it's, God tells me what to do. And it may not be so. So that's Nishvoim Bishmi Lashoke. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says that, that we will not tolerate. He's an Eid Memaher, he's a swift witness against it, and they'll take retribution for it, etc. So again, what does that have to do with Pesach? That haftorah should be in the 3 weeks. That haftorah should discuss, like the Novi Yeshayahu does in his Chazon of Yeshayahu, the failings of the Jewish people, the failings of Jewish leadership, the corruption that existed. But here, we want to go to a yontiv of joy and happiness and goodness, and this haftorah lays upon us a very heavy burden. And not only that, then the Novi describes for us the process of the final redemption of the Jewish people. the Geula. So that we can say, well, the Geula has a connection to Pesach. Kishem shegoalti eschem. So, right, I'll be goel you, achris kareshis, it'll happen again. Ki meitzeischo me'eretz Mitzrayim arenu niflos. Just as you saw wonders when you went out of Egypt, the Rebbeinu Shalom promises us that the process of the Geula will also be wondrous. Now, it could be wondrous and nobody noticed it. That also can happen. Because that happened by Yetzias Mitzrayim also. Because one would say, someone that saw all the miracles and everything, how can he say, Nitna Rosh v'no Shuva Mitzrayim? We're going to go home to Egypt. Let's not forget it. After the Makos, and after Kriyas Yamsuf, and after the Mon, and what do you mean? But that's human nature. Human nature is that we ignore the miraculous, so to speak. It does not really affect us. It's one of the great rules of Chazal, that Nisim don't prove anything, because people don't change their minds because of Nisim. We see that by the prophet Eliyahu, who is mentioned in this week's haftora. Hineni shaleach lachem es Eliyahu Hanovi. So he's not spelled mole, he's spelled without a vav. Because of the fact that it won't be perfect. And Eliyahu Hanovi, he made the miracle with the Nevi'ei Abal, and he brought down from heaven a fire that consumed everything, and the people all fell on their face, and they said, Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. Wonderful, everybody was Chazer b'tshuva. What could be better? And then the next day, they're back to the Avodah Zarah. And Elio has to run for his life. Because miracles don't really change people. People have to change people. You have to change from the inside. And the miracles are instantaneous. They make an impression for a minute. But after that, it fades. I mean, we are living through a miraculous time, but nobody feels there are any miracles, right? It's olam k'minhago noeg. So that is part of the message of Pesach. And therefore, what Pesach comes to do is to reinforce mitzvahs for us. And we would not even recognize it as a miracle if it were not that it was a mitzvah for us to say it. V'yigadeto levincha lemor ba'avur zeh osa Hashem li b'tzeisi miMitzrayim. Because if it wouldn't be a mitzvah, then it's a history lesson. And history can be falsified, and history can be forgotten, and inconvenient history can always be omitted. You know, we live at a time when people finally come to a realization that there's such a thing as fake news. So it ends up that all news is fake, which is also a revelation. But there can be such a thing as fake history also. False narratives of what happened. And therefore, the Torah concentrated on the mitzvahs. Matzah, mor, menachin lefanecha. And this is what you should say. So there are all sorts of, in the history of the Jewish people, there have been all sorts of new hagodos. So I remember as a child yet, there was a hagodah from the Marxists, Jews. And, you know, and Lenin had what to say in the Haggadah, and Marx had to say in the Haggadah. And they said that was the Haggadah. So in order to keep it straight, so the Torah did it to us with mitzvahs. And then the purpose of the Geula is very interesting. Hineni shaleach lachem es Eliyahu hanovi. So he doesn't say there that everybody will be chozer b'tshuva, and everybody will become observant. He doesn't say everybody will put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. It's enough the rabbi does. But he says, Lahoshiv leivovos albonim leivbonim alavoso. Somehow the task is to bind the generations together. That they have the same narrative. That it's the same story. That they have the same relationship. And since it is always part of human nature that the next generation really disapproves of the previous generation, because look at all the mess that they left us. They didn't leave us a perfect world. You know, the world's going to end in 12 years. So what are we going to do? And the Torah says that Eliyahu will come. That's this first step in the Geula. The first step in the redemption of the Jewish people is that the generations should be able to speak to each other. That they should have one heart, they should have one mission, one goal. They should understand each other. And that is the idea of Pesach. It's in Kana ben Shoel, it says in the Haggadah, right? Here he's going to ask you. He's going to ask you. The Torah tells you in advance. All the Arba Bonim appear in the Torah. And the Torah tells you in advance, what are you going to say to the Rasha? What are you going to say to the Tam? What are you going to say to the Chacham? So that's what the Navi wanted to impress upon us. But he gives a frightening description of the period that precedes it. A time of fire, time of destruction. And he says that the Lord will loose the sun from its shield, and for the righteous it will be healing, and for the wicked it will be destructive. We have examples of that in the physical world today. You have the nuclear medicine, I think, is a good example of it. That on one hand it heals. There are thousands and tens of thousands of people alive because of radiation therapy. And there also are tens of thousands of people destroyed by radioactivity. So that's the imagery that Navi uses. And that imagery depends upon the people, as it always does. It depends upon whether or not one wants to view everything in life as sun or as destruction. So this haftora really contains many of the basic ideas of Judaism, of the Torah. And therefore, it really is a proper presentation and a proper introduction to Pesach. And because Pesach is the basic holiday, that's the one that begins us. Every mitzvah is Zecher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim. Every mitzvah deals with these matters. So the Navi promises us there'll be a time v'orval Hashem minchas Yehuda v'Yerushalayim k'mei olam chashonim kadmoniyos. There'll be a time yet that you'll get it. That what you give to God will be sweet to you, will be pleasant to you. You'll follow through with it. You'll see it in a different light. And so the Navi Malachi it really has important bearing for us on what he has to say. I mentioned to you that there are different opinions who Malachi is. One opinion in the Talmud is that Malachi is Ezra himself. The other opinion is that it can't be Ezra because he's mentioned in the book of Ezra as a separate person. So there was somebody called Malachi. And there also is an opinion that Malachi is Mordechai, who wrote the Megillah. So the fact that we don't know him is also enigmatic, and it shows us that the symbol here, that the last of the Nevi'im is, so to speak, everybody that follows this path and has this goal and mission in their lives as well. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashia Omer Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu L'zakos es Yisrael Aficha Chiv Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenem Adonai Chavei Tzaman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir. Amen.